The world outside was fire and ruin. Captain Nathan Carter clawed his way out of the wreckage, his breath ragged inside the cracked visor of his helmet. His pulse thundered in his ears, but he forced himself to focus. The once pristine hull of his scout vessel was now a twisted heap of metal and fire, half buried in alien soil. Smoke curled into the toxic sky, glowing orange under a distant sun. Nathan yanked his emergency sidearm from its holster and scanned the battlefield. He had no idea where he was. One moment, he had been charting an unclaimed sector on the edge of Terran-controlled space. The next, his ship's warning systems had screamed as a gravity well yanked him into the middle of an orbital skirmish. No distress signal, no time to react. Just an unseen force tearing him from the void and sending him plummeting to the surface of an unknown world. Now, all around him, war raged. A thunderous explosion sent shockwaves through the ground, forcing him into a crouch. Through the thick haze, he saw monstrous figures moving in jagged formation. The first were towering reptilian warriors clad in dark armor, their elongated snouts revealing rows of serrated teeth. The Drowkoth. Nathan recognized them from classified Terran war reports, an empire of ruthless conquerors that saw lesser species as stepping stones to expansion. Their heavy-energy rifles pulsed with violet light as they advanced, systematically cutting down their opposition. And then there were the Tarkva, insectoid and agile. The Tarkva fought with sheer desperation, their exoskeletal limbs darting through cover as they fired kinetic rounds at the advancing enemy. They were losing, badly. Nathan had no stake in this war. He should stay hidden, wait for an opportunity to escape, find some way to contact Terran Command. But as he watched a Tarkva soldier get impaled by a Drowkoth war spear, something in his gut twisted. A barked order rang out from the enemy lines, and a Drowkoth officer raised a crackling energy blade, preparing to execute a wounded Tarkva who struggled to crawl away. The Tarkva wasn't a warrior anymore, just another casualty. Nathan didn't think. He moved. Raising his pistol, he squeezed the trigger. A high-caliber round punched through the officer's skull, dropping him instantly. The battlefield hesitated, alien eyes snapping toward the unexpected shot. Then chaos erupted. Nathan sprinted forward, grabbing the fallen Drowkoth's rifle before ducking into a crater for cover. The weapon was heavier than his standard-issue gear, but its controls were simple enough. He adjusted his grip, aimed, and fired. A violet bolt struck another enemy square in the chest, sending the reptilian soldier sprawling. The Tarkva took advantage of the disruption. Their scattered forces regrouped, surging forward with newfound aggression. Nathan didn't stop to consider whether this was a mistake. He was already in the fight. Every movement was instinct. He dodged plasma fire, rolled behind a chunk of debris, and fired precise, controlled shots. His military training took over. Minutes stretched into eternity. The Drowkoth faltered, thrown off by an enemy they hadn't accounted for. A tactical retreat rippled through their ranks, and as quickly as it had started, the battle ended. Nathan exhaled sharply, his muscles burning from exertion. Around him, the surviving Tarkva emerged from cover, their bioluminescent eyes locking onto him. He kept his weapon raised, uncertain of their reaction. One of them stepped forward, larger than the others. This Tarkva carried himself with a commanding presence. His deep red exoskeleton bore the marks of a seasoned warrior, and a jagged scar ran across his mandibles. Commander Vector. Nathan had no way of knowing his name, but the way the other Tarkva looked to him confirmed his authority. The commander tilted his head, studying the human who had just altered the course of their battle. Then, in a guttural, heavily accented voice, he spoke. "You are not one of us." Nathan tightened his grip on the stolen rifle. "No," he admitted, "I'm not." Vector glanced at the remains of the battlefield. The scent of scorched flesh and ionized air still lingered. "Yet you fight." Nathan hesitated. He hadn't meant to. He hadn't planned to. But here he was, standing among alien warriors, his hands stained with the blood of their enemies. "I fight to survive," he said at last. The Tark-VA commander considered his words. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he extended his lower arm, palm open, a gesture of recognition, a test. Nathan lowered his rifle. His body screamed at him to be cautious, but something in Vector's expression wasn't hostile. It was something else. Acknowledgement. He grasped the Tark-VA's arm. The warrior's grip was ironclad. Vector's mandibles clicked in approval. "Then you fight with us now, human." Nathan didn't argue. He wasn't sure he had a choice. The Tark-VA war camp was a hive of movement and tension, its perimeter a labyrinth of trenches, barricades, and makeshift fortifications. Fires burned low, casting jagged shadows against the alien terrain, while wounded warriors hissed in pain as their wounds were treated with luminescent salves. Nathan Carter stood at the heart of it, feeling every set of eyes on him. The Tark-VA had accepted him, tentatively. Some watched with curiosity, others with skepticism. A few, like Second Blade Karak, openly bristled at his presence, their mandibles clicking in displeasure. Only Commander Vector seemed truly willing to acknowledge him as more than an anomaly. "You adapt quickly," Vector said, striding beside him. Most off-worlders would have died before firing their first shot. Nathan adjusted the Drowkoff rifle slung across his back. Most off-worlders don't get dragged into wars they don't understand. Vector let out a sound that might have been laughter. Understanding comes through survival. Nathan studied the camp as they walked. The Tark-VA were losing. That much was clear. Their soldiers moved with the weary precision of warriors who had been fighting too long with too little. Supplies were low, and morale was thinner still. Even with his limited grasp of their language, he caught enough whispers to know that many believed their war was already lost. The Drowkoff weren't just superior in numbers. They were organized, relentless, and technologically advanced. The Tark-VA had courage, but courage alone didn't win wars. Nathan had spent his life as a soldier. He'd seen what happened when a desperate force faced an overwhelming enemy. He knew where this was headed, but he also knew how to fight smart. The first offensive, 2 days after joining the Tark-VA, Nathan stood alongside them in battle. It wasn't by choice. The Drowkoth attacked at dawn, their assault brutal and unyielding. Plasma fire rained down in controlled arcs, cutting through cover like molten knives. Tark-VA warriors scattered, outgunned and outmaneuvered. Nathan saw the flaws immediately. The Tark-VA fought with honor. Too much honor. They faced the enemy head-on, unwilling to retreat even when the battle turned against them. It was bravery, but it was also suicide. He wasn't about to let himself die for their mistakes. "Break formation," he bellowed, voice cutting through the chaos. "Use the terrain. Move." At first, they hesitated. Then Vector echoed the order, his voice carrying weight that Nathan's did not. The Tark-VA warriors followed, shifting into the cover of the jagged rock formations that lined the battlefield. Nathan ducked behind a collapsed structure, gripping the stolen rifle. The Drowkoff were advancing in rigid, predictable lines. They had strength, but they lacked flexibility. He could use that. A sharp whistle from above, a Tark-VA scout, clinging to the cliffside, pointing toward an exposed ammunition crawler in the Drowkoff formation. An opening. Nathan reacted without thinking. "Cover me." He broke into a sprint, plasma fire scorching the ground at his heels. He slid behind the crawler, planting an explosive charge scavenged from a fallen Tark-VA soldier. A single detonation would send a chain reaction through the Drowkotha supply line. A shadow loomed behind him. Nathan spun just in time to block a vicious strike from a Drowkoff warrior, its serrated blade clashing against his rifle. The reptilian alien snarled, bearing down with inhuman strength. Nathan gritted his teeth, twisting his weapon to force the blade aside. The Drowkoth reared back for a killing blow. A Tark-VA blade erupted from its throat. Nathan staggered back as the enemy fell, revealing Karak standing behind it, mandibles flaring in silent defiance. Karak's compound eyes locked onto him. "You fight like a Drowkoff." It wasn't a compliment. Nathan didn't have time to argue. The charge was set. He slammed his fist against the detonator, and the battlefield ignited. A victory, but not a win. The explosion ripped through the Drowkoff ranks, their supply lines crumbling in fire and debris. The tide of battle shifted. The Tark VA pressed forward, striking with newfound ferocity. By nightfall, the enemy had withdrawn. Nathan sat on a jagged outcrop, catching his breath as Tark VA warriors collected their dead. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal and ozone. Vector approached, lowering himself into a crouch beside Nathan. "Your tactics saved us today." Nathan exhaled sharply. "For how long?" The commander's mandibles tightened. "Long enough." Nathan stared at the darkened horizon. The Drowkoff weren't defeated. They had been inconvenienced. The next battle would come. The war would go on, and he was now a part of it. Nathan Carter tightened the straps on his scavenged Drowkoff armor, rolling his shoulders to test the fit. The plates were heavier than his standard-issue gear, but they would hold. The Tark VA warriors around him moved with focused efficiency, their preparations eerily silent. There were no grand speeches, no last-minute doubts. The war had bled them dry, and now they had nothing left to give except one final stand. The Drowkoff war machine was coming. Nathan stood beside Commander Vector at the center of the Tark VA defensive line, watching the horizon burn. Their scouts had reported the enemy's approach, an overwhelming force, reinforced with siege walkers and air support. The Tark VA could not win a prolonged battle, but Nathan hadn't survived this long by playing fair. "We need to change the rules," he muttered, adjusting the alien rifle slung across his back. Vector turned his bioluminescent gaze toward him. "Explain." Nathan stepped forward, using the dusty ground to sketch out a rough map of the battlefield. "The Drowkoff will expect us to hold our position and die here. We don't." He slashed a line through the center. "We give them an open path. Let them think we're breaking, then collapse on them from both sides." The Tark VA warriors closest to him exchanged uncertain glances. Second Blade Karak, who had opposed Nathan from the start, clicked his mandibles in skepticism. "Cowardice." "No," Nathan said, locking eyes with him. "Tactics." Vector studied the plan for a long moment. Then, with a slow nod, he straightened. "We do it." The commander's word was final. The Tark VA moved swiftly, repositioning their forces, hollowing out the center of their defenses while fortifying the flanks. Nathan didn't know if it would be enough. He only knew they had no other option. The battle breaks. The Drowkoff came at dawn, a wall of fire and steel. Their artillery screamed through the air, reducing Tark VA positions to rubble. Plasma-wielding shock troops advanced in disciplined formations, methodical in their slaughter. The Tark VA resisted fiercely, but as planned, their center wavered. Nathan made sure of it. He fought alongside them, keeping the illusion of desperation alive. He ducked behind wreckage, returned fire with brutal precision, and when the moment was right, he gave the order. "Fall back!" The Tark VA in the center obeyed, pulling away in a controlled retreat. The Drowkoff surged forward, sensing victory. And then the trap closed. Tark VA warriors burst from the flanks, weapons blazing. Energy blades cut through Drowkoff ranks. Plasma fire sighed through their officers. The enemy's tight formations collapsed into chaos. Nathan seized the opportunity. He vaulted over a fallen barricade, weaving between the wreckage as he closed in on the Drowkoff command unit. If they wanted to break the enemy for good, they had to cut off the head. The duel. Nathan reached the enemy war leader first. General Korvek was waiting for him. The Drowkoff commander stood tall amidst the carnage, his obsidian armor gleaming with the blood of both friend and foe. His plasma-forged war blade hummed in the air, the edge glowing with contained energy. Nathan barely had time to react before Korvek struck. He dodged, the blade passing inches from his face. The heat singed his skin. He rolled, bringing up his stolen rifle and firing 3 quick shots. Korvek deflected them with terrifying speed, the bolts ricocheting into the ground. Nathan had fought killers before, but Korvek wasn't just a killer. He was a conqueror. The general came at him again, relentless. Nathan barely blocked the next strike with the butt of his rifle, the impact jolting through his bones. He staggered back, searching for an opening. Then he saw it. Korvek lifted his blade for a decisive overhead strike, leaving his midsection momentarily unguarded. Nathan dropped his rifle, yanked a combat knife from his belt, and lunged. The blade sank between the plates of the general's armor. Korvek exhaled sharply, his massive frame shuddering. Nathan twisted the knife deeper, then yanked it free. The Drowkoth general collapsed to his knees, his weapon slipping from his grasp. Nathan stepped back, panting. Around them, the battlefield had shifted. With their leader fallen, the Drowkoth's cohesion broke. Tarkvieh warriors surged forward, routing the enemy. The impossible had happened. The Tarkvieh had won. The end of a war. By nightfall, the Drowkoth were in full retreat. The Tarkvieh stood victorious, but the cost was carved into the battlefield, bodies, wreckage, and a silence that felt too heavy. Nathan sat on the edge of a fallen war machine, wiping blood from his face. His hands trembled, but not from fear, just exhaustion. Vector approached, his own armor dented, his expression unreadable. He looked down at Nathan, then at the ruined battlefield. "You changed this war," the commander said. Nathan exhaled. "I didn't come here to fight it." Vector tilted his head. "Yet you did." Nathan looked at the horizon, where the last of the Drowkoth warships were vanishing into the sky. Maybe they would return. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, he had done his part. The Tarkvieh had found a future. And Nathan Carter, the human who jumped into war, had found something, too.